The battle for the fate of Warner Brothers just took a wild turn, but one that's not terribly unexpected. If you've been listening to this channel for the last couple of months, then you've probably known damn well this was coming, and that is this. Paramount has submitted yet another offer in a long list of them, about 10 at this point by my count. And this one better than the last, and it's got Warner Brothers scratching their chin, and maybe, just maybe, Netflix as well. Renegade Online. Well, folks, welcome back. Another great day here at Valiant Renegade. It's good to see all of you out there once again. And if you are like one of the many watching this video not yet subscribed to this channel, please take a moment and turn that little red subscribe button to gray. Hit that like button, hit that notification bell, share this sucker out on the social medias, and of course, please do leave a comment before you head out the door today. Make sure to join us every Sunday afternoon right here at 6 p.m. Eastern for the live show. And in addition to that, don't forget we have the Paramount earnings call at 4:45 Eastern on Wednesday, February 25th, probably just a few hours before you're watching this video. Get your butts there. And then the Warner Brothers earnings call the following morning on Thursday, February 26th. Let's get down to brass tacks. This was the press release that was issued by Warner Brothers earlier on Tuesday. The revised proposal from Paramount includes an increased purchase price of $31 per share in cash. In cash. Now, remember, I want to remind everybody that the difference between the Paramount offer still to this day versus the original Netflix offer that is still on the table and that Warner Brothers tentatively accepted or at least recommended to shareholders out there was for $27.75 minus the linear assets, of course. This is just for the film and television studios plus HBO Max, but it is a combination of cash and Netflix stock. And of course, as we keep reminding folks, Netflix stock has dropped over 30% since they began negotiations with Warner Brothers, making this far more financially uncomfortable for Netflix to fulfill that offer. Even though they still can, it's not as clean.
Where's my money?
Now, the other details of this proposal are important, and the language that Warner Brothers uses here is also very important, so listen carefully. We're going to give you all the information that you need to come to an informed conclusion here. In addition to a $31 per share for Warner Brothers stock, all in cash, they have included a daily ticking fee, which we talked about before. A daily ticking fee equal to 25 cents per share per quarter beginning after September 30th, 2026. This is a detail that has so far been glossed over by so many out there in the media, but it is one that is of crucial importance. Initially, the ticking fee was a flat 25 cents per quarter. They've seemed to have now added this language, unless I'm mistaken, and it was in the earlier conjecture. But this 25-cent ticking fee is going to have a daily pro rata tick, meaning it's 25 cents a quarter, but they're now going to prorate this day by day. And the most important thing is that it's no longer January 1st of 2027. The ticking fee of 25 cents per share now commences on September 30th, meaning the entire fourth calendar or fiscal quarter of 2026 is now going to get a bumper if Paramount can't conclude the deal by then. Paramount is apparently so confident that they will be able to get through the regulatory processes that is needed to conclude this deal should Warner Brothers shareholders award it to Paramount, that they've stepped up this massive bonus by a full 3 months. In addition to that, Paramount is also promising Warner Brothers a $7 billion regulatory termination fee payable by Paramount in the event the transaction does not close due to regulatory matters. Holy crap, that is a lot of money. $7 billion. In addition to the ticking fee, that if it's delayed and it finally does go through, that if it's delayed an entire year past September 30th, 2026, that means the current offer would be $32 automatically by contract. But if it doesn't go through at all, David Zaslav and Warner Brothers shareholders will walk away with $7 billion in cash. Good Lord. If there is another example out there of absolute quintessential big balls confidence in what you're offering to buy something like Warner Brothers, I don't know if I haven't seen it. I don't think there's a better example out there. $7 billion is a lot of money for a termination fee, especially when we're talking about a deal at this scale. You know, $7 billion if you're buying a $2 or $3 or $400 billion company in an M&A is something, but we're talking about an M&A that might amount to $100 to $130 billion. $7 billion is a big promise if it doesn't go through. That means that David Ellison and his cabal are incredibly confident that they will be able to just smooth their way through the regulatory process, which a lot of people have suggested that is all because of the favoritism of Donald Trump, but that is not entirely true. As we've stated before, the merits of the Paramount offer are superior because of the acquisition of the linear brands as opposed to just the film and television studios and HBO streaming. Even throw that out for a minute. If you consider the fact that David Ellison and his dad, Larry Ellison, and the whole cabal of Paramount are also confident that they can smooth their way through the European Union, because that's another regulatory body that a lot of people forgot about. Well, that says volumes. And if you don't know the story or you don't believe me, just check your own left-wing Hollywood media. Here's a story from Variety magazine from just a couple of days ago. Could EU regulators favor Paramount over Netflix in a battle for Warner Brothers Discovery? The answer is perhaps yes. If you don't know the historical lineage here between the EU and Netflix, it has been one that is fraught with issues, to say the least. Now, the EU has a very different structure and tone than the U.S. when it comes to regulatory scrutiny. And they are covering and representing a multitude of different regulatory environments in various countries. Let me give you an example. The Walt Disney Company just a few years ago was having to contend with deciding whether or not to put things on Disney Plus in France within a 30 to 45-day window from theatrical, because there are French laws that say that if you want to release something in theaters, then you can't put it onto streaming for at least a year. Disney had to juggle this. Go back and look at my own channel. We talked about this a few years ago. This is kind of one of those things that Netflix is going to have to deal with, but at the same time, Paramount already has a very storied and well-documented history of honoring theatrical windows, and they're planning to do that with Warner Brothers. Netflix, once again, is still trying to make the same arguments that even though up until 3 months ago, they absolutely despised theatrical distribution, that now suddenly they're amorous towards the idea because they're buying Warner Brothers. And people keep asking the question, well, how long is that deal going to last? Are you going to put that in writing? Are you going to promise the European Union and countries like France, for good or ill, whether you like their politics or not, is really not at issue here? It's just the regulatory environment that Netflix has to contend with. And EU regulators seem to be more skeptical of the Netflix promises right now than they are of Paramount's. And the regulatory environment, even in domestic areas, are going to be a bit more complicated than just the federal side, because you will have places like the state of California, obviously, that have their own systems and set of rules that could throw a monkey wrench into things. California Attorney General says the state is taking a, quote, close look at Netflix or a Paramount merger with Warner Brothers amid antitrust concerns. So from the regulatory side, forget the federal government and forget the EU for a moment. Then you've got California. Now, let me give you a little insight into where California is in case you don't know, when it comes to situations, specifically when it comes to the entertainment industry, of course, California is led by the nose by Hollywood bigwigs, the Burbank crowd, the Brentwood neighborhood crowd, the Los Angeles crowd, the Rodeo Drive crowd. Go on down the road. These people are the ones who dictate a lot of things to the California legislature. And I think we've already gotten some kind of indication as to where they lean. And that includes big Hollywood bigwig James Cameron, because James Cameron does what James Cameron does because James Cameron is James Cameron, as we always say. But in this case, James Cameron wrote a rather scathing rebuttal himself when it came to the fact that Netflix was trying to acquire Warner Brothers. And James Cameron, of course, was none too enamored with the idea. And Ted Sarandos, being the good CEO that he is of Netflix, and I truly do mean that. And if you have watched me for any amount of time, you know that regardless of how I feel about the kind of products that Netflix may have put out, at least in some sense or another, not all of them, but some of them, have been less than subpar in many cases. I do have a tremendous amount of respect for Ted Sarandos and his co-CEO, Greg Peters. They have built an empire and an entire industry, if I might say, from the ground up. And I have a tremendous amount of accolades and lauding of praise to foist upon them. But that's when they stay in their lane, streaming on Netflix. People like James Cameron and the entire theatrical industry seem to be rather nervous. The CEO of Cinemark Theaters just last week during their earnings call discussed that they were very, very apprehensive about the veracity of Netflix's claims to keep things like theatrical distribution as healthy as they have been should they be successful in acquiring Warner Brothers. I have a feeling that the CEO of Cinemark, and today the earnings call of AMC, although it was not directly addressed, if at all, by CEO Adam Aron, and we wish him well following recovery from his recent stroke, I think that they're probably more comfortable with Paramount taking this over and the Ellisons taking this over, since Paramount has shown its unbridled committal to theatrical distribution. Netflix, again, antagonistic right up until December, when they decided that, hey, on a whim, shit, let's go get Warner Brothers.
Hey, where are the white women at?
Now, again, speaking of Warner Brothers, expect a lot of bustle and news in the next 48 to 72 hours. We've got the Warner Brothers earnings call on February 26th at 8 a.m. Eastern. And on Wednesday, February 25th, we've got Paramount Skydance at 4:45 p.m. Eastern. We will be covering those live right here on Valiant Renegade, both of those, and we'll have a lot of analysis and commentary following. Don't go anywhere. Don't miss it. Be here for these. I promise you, you're going to want to be. Now, getting back to the proposition by Paramount to Warner Brothers, payment by P-Sky of the $2.8 billion termination fee that Warner Brothers Discovery would be required to pay to Netflix to terminate the existing Netflix merger agreement, an obligation to contribute additional equity funding to the extent needed to support the solvency certificate required by P-Sky's lending banks, and a company material adverse effect definition that includes, or that excludes, the performance of WBD's global linear networks business. Breaking it down, simple as this, that means that Netflix is going to be owed a $2.8 billion breakup fee check by Warner Brothers should they decide to then rescind the acquisition to Netflix's offer that has come previously, if they were to go with Paramount, for example. Paramount has agreed to cover the cost, that whole $2.8 billion breakup fee. I want you to imagine for a minute, if you're a married couple that and you're the husband who suddenly decided to get divorced from his wife, and the wife walks out the door angry and pissed off, and your new girlfriend shows up with a better deal, with bigger tits who is 15 years younger and then tells you that she's going to pay all of the alimony for your ex-wife. That's what Paramount is doing.
Okie dokie. You like it?
Now, I want to go to this point because this has led to some degree of confusion out there. Warner Brothers today announced its board of directors, consistent with its fiduciary duties and following consultation with its independent financial and legal advisors, has determined that this revised proposal from Paramount that we just discussed could reasonably be expected to lead to a, quote, company superior proposal as defined in WBD's merger agreement with Netflix. Now, I want you to understand that that is a recitation of legal boilerplate that was in the Netflix agreement, because you have to give Netflix a reason to say that, well, we now have something on the table pursuant to our contract with you or our agreement in good faith with you, of course, before we have shareholder vote or shareholder referendum, which is coming on March 20th, by the way, at 8 a.m. We will be covering that live with Warner Brothers as well. That this Paramount proposal that came out yesterday could be perceived as being a superior agreement. Now, what does that mean? We've covered this for weeks, and we've told you what's been going on because you have a lot of Wall Street bigwigs, Wall Street analysts, mutual fund, investment fund, hedge fund managers out there saying, hey, not so damn fast out there. You know, you guys want us to go with Netflix, but you know what? This Paramount offer over here for previously $30 per share for the whole kit and caboodle. We're far more comfortable with that, with $30 in cash, not $27.75 from Netflix that is some cash and some Netflix stock that, again, has dropped about 40% in the last 6 months, by the way. That looks pretty good. So Warner Brothers is now basically acquiescing to their designs on that. That, yeah, you know what? This Paramount proposal could actually be better. But here's where it gets real goofball. Hold on to your butts, kids.
Hold on to your butts.
The Warner Brothers board has not made a determination as to whether the revised P-Sky proposal is superior to the merger with Netflix. Warner Brothers will engage further with P-Sky to determine if a proposal that constitutes a company superior proposal, as defined in the Netflix merger agreement, can be reached. In the event the Warner Brothers board ultimately determines such a company superior proposal has been received, Netflix will have 4 business days after such determination to negotiate with Warner and to propose any revisions to the Netflix transaction.
What?
What?
What are you even saying?
What the does that mean? So here's what Warner Brothers is saying. They have not yet agreed in principle to Paramount's offer this week. However, Warner Brothers is intrigued enough for one reason or another that Paramount may be on pace to take down the Netflix offer. They're simply not willing to say it yet. And the reason they're putting that out there is because they are not wanting to yet start the 4-day clock on Netflix's ability to respond to either match or exceed the Paramount offer. What's also curious in there is that Warner Brothers seems to make it clear that they have been enticed enough to continue engagement with David Ellison and Larry Ellison by extension and Paramount Skydance to see if yet further concessions by Paramount can be made. To suggest that Paramount's offer has been made, but yet there are still ongoing negotiations, for lack of better words, seems to suggest that behind the scenes, Paramount is saying, hey, we're putting this on the table to push the brake pedal. You tell us what more you want, and let's see if we can make it happen. There may yet be another offer from Paramount coming that may have even more concession, because Paramount obviously really wants this. And I have a feeling, as I said before, that Netflix really wants to get out. Their stock price has been hammered. In the last 6 months, Netflix has been smashed by 35%. And if we look at the tracker here on Yahoo Finance, a publicly available page that anybody can go examine for themselves, we look back here on October 21st. We started seeing a big drop there. Now, I want to let everybody know that this was around the same time that we saw an overall massive amount of pressure smashing down on the NASDAQ 100, particularly the FANG stocks, the big tech, which obviously Netflix is a part of, but so too is things like Meta, Facebook, Netflix, Apple, Amazon, Google, so on and so forth. They all got kind of beat up hard. We didn't think about much here when that happened because there was a concern over the longevity of the fulfillment of promises of what artificial intelligence or AI has run the NASDAQ up on for the last several years. What we really have to look at here is what happened as we got into December, right here. Netflix was still around $110 a share. This was about the same time that Netflix began engaging with Warner Brothers and came out of their shell and suddenly decided that, hey, you know what? For the last 7 or 8 years that we've been pissing on theatrical releases, well, now all of a sudden we like theatrical because we want to go buy Warner Brothers and we want to make everybody feel at ease that we're not going to take a hot, steaming donkey dump all over movie theaters like AMC and Cinemark. And that $110 dug into the dirt as low as almost $75 a share. And finally, Wall Street analysts have come around to one certainty. And that is that regardless of how good of an earnings report that Netflix has cranked out in the last few weeks, which they did, again, they make more dollar profit now than the Walt Disney Company. And they're doing it on less than half the revenue. Their profit margins continue to increase, now approaching 30%, which is insane for a tech company like this. So what is it? It must be the fact that Wall Street cannot find where the value is in paying nearly $100 billion to simply buy, at least in measurement by the long term, IPs like Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings. What is Netflix going to do with HBO Max? What is Netflix going to do with theatrical after a few years? What is Netflix going to do with PVOD, which they suddenly promised just in the last 10 days that they would honor PVOD windows? What about physical media? People really need to start asking. Yes, Netflix is big. Yes, Netflix built an industry. But at the same time, why is Netflix deviating from its own self-made lane to drive into others that it has no idea how to even start the car?
What do you want?
It's not that simple.
What do you want?
And then there's my boy on Fox Business, Charles Gasparino, breaking, with Warner Brothers now weighing whether to make P-Sky's $31 a share bid is something more than a reasonable superior offer. All eyes will be on Ted Sarandos, Netflix CEO, and the Netflix lobbying team ostensibly on K Street in Washington, D.C. to try and mollify Trump's regulators over their growing antitrust concerns, not just on its deal, but the Netflix business model. My sources say. My guess, based on talking to people in D.C., that's going to be a heavy lift, which will mean to keep recommending the Netflix deal. Meaning that as of right now, in terms of Washington, D.C. regulators, Netflix is at an extreme disadvantage. And it's not because of Donald Trump being friends or whatever with Larry Ellison or Larry Ellison being friends with Trump. It's about the merits of the case. And that's what I've been telling you now for months. The merits, the numbers. It favors Paramount between Paramount and Netflix when it comes to Warner Brothers. That hasn't changed. I realize a lot of people on the left out there want to pretend like this is all Donald Trump sullying the works. And there may be some argument there, especially when he makes remarks about Susan Rice the way he does and then puts Netflix in the same post. I grant you that. However, in the grand scheme of things, that's small potatoes. The numbers don't align for Netflix. They do for Paramount. Warner Brothers will have to argue to shareholders that they should wait around 2 years through regulatory scrutiny and uncertainty both here and Europe. And as I said before, the EU may actually be the bigger booger in Netflix's nose versus the FTC here at home, as opposed to Warner Brothers taking Peace Guy's $31 all-cash offer. Again, not cash in stock like Netflix, but all-cash offer for the whole kit and caboodle, including linear, for the entire company that simply doesn't have the same regulatory baggage. Again, that's Paramount. And recall, says Mr. Gasparino, that Netflix is relying on a chunk of uncertain change from the sale of the Warner Brothers cable assets to supplement its $27.75 bid for the studio and streamer.
Congregation, I said, can I get an amen?
Money aside, even if Netflix matches dollar for dollar what Peace Guy is offering and then some, the regulatory uncertainty is immense. So far, neither Ted Sarandos, Greg Peters for that matter, nor his lobby legal team has been able to make a persuasive argument that social media negates antitrust when you combine two large streamers with the Trump people and those in Europe. Should be an interesting 4 days. Thank you for your attention to this matter. It's become no question to investors, at least investors that have a lick of sense, that the Paramount Skydance offer is vastly superior to that of Netflix. It removes uncertainty on so many fronts, not just legal in terms of Trump bad and Trump hate Netflix or whatever the hell these people think. But the more important uncertainty that it eliminates is the financial uncertainty. It's a risk-off move to pick Paramount over Netflix because Paramount is taking all the risk off the table. Who wants to be saddled with the linear assets in a risk pile that might happen 12 months from now? Just ask, once again, Universal how the whole Versant thing went. Where just a few months ago, when it came out, it was floating around $45 to $46 a share and is now sitting south of 30. Is that what Warner Brothers investors and shareholders really want? Or do they want a bird in the hand today? The answer seems quite clear, but the question is Warner Brothers going to take it? Are they going to continue to negotiate with Paramount? Is Paramount going to go even higher than 31 out the gate right now without the ticking fee? We don't know yet, but Warner Brothers obviously is very, very apprehensive about shifting gears to Paramount because that starts a 4-day clock to Netflix. And I know there's folks out there thinking that Netflix is playing the long game, trying to string this thing out so that Warner Brothers can go ahead and conclude their spinoff of the linear assets. But that's a long ways away. It's certainly a lot further off than March 20th, when Warner Brothers has already scheduled this for a vote from shareholders. So we're going to know something definitive by then, roughly 3.5 weeks from now. And we'll be covering it live right here on Valiant Renegade. You've been coming here for 5 years to get the skinny on things, to get the no bullshit analysis on things. And we're going to keep doing it. And I'll tell you right now, not to toot my own horn, but we've been right about this for a while. And by the way, Charlie Gasparino, if you're out there, hey, look, Greg Gutfeld has given me some props before.
It seems woke Disney fairy tales equal low ticket sales. Box office analysis of Disney's last 8 studio releases show a shocking loss of nearly $1 billion. That's almost a lawsuit. That's according to a number crunched by prominent YouTuber Valiant Renegade, who argues that many of Disney's recent so-called hits barely broke even or flat out tanked.
I would love to be on Fox Business. Give me a call. Make sure you're subscribed to Valiant Renegade and join us every Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern for the live show.